The Calgary Flames might be the only pyramid scheme we can get behind.
You're Locked On Flames, your daily podcast on the Calgary Flames. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's episode of Locked On Flames. Thank you so much for tuning in. As always, I'm your host, Jess Belmosto, and today we are joined by my co-host, Nick Zararis. Nick, how are you doing?
I'm tired like everybody else who stayed up to watch Monday Night Football.
Fair. And if you are also part of the tired group, don't worry, we're not trying to recruit you into a pyramid scheme. We're actually here to talk about the Calgary Flames. And make sure you're subscribed because we're back to daily shows and you can find us wherever you get your podcasts and, of course, on YouTube as well. So let's just jump right into this. We have to talk about, really, it's a pyramid of who's the most essential to just there.
Exactly, yeah. The way I like to think about roster construction in any sport is how many paths to success do you have? How many opportunities do you have to be successful based on the group you have put together? Can you only win one certain type of way? Are you going to be dependent on things that are really unlikely to happen? Are you a team that's built on goaltending and defense that's going to have a very narrow path to victory most nights? Or are you a team that's adaptable? Can you score a lot? Can you play strong defense? Can your goalie steal you a game? And that's where you start thinking about it in terms of, okay, based on how the Flames have constructed this roster, who is most important to the team's success? That's really the nebulous idea for the foundation of this episode.
Yeah. And, if you want to know who I think the most important player is, you can go listen to yesterday's episode because it's right in the title. But I think, who would you say? Who do you have starting off your list?
We can start with, the way I started it is, at the top of the pyramid, the most important, I have Markstrom, I have Huberdeau, and I have Rasmus Andersson. Those are my three. I have one from each position group. I think based on the way last season went, the fact that the team is basically bringing back the same group, sans Tyler Toffoli, I think Markstrom has to be the most important because if they got even league average goaltending, they would have made the playoffs last year. So I think based on the way the Flames are constructed, where they're not going to be able to score a ton, like they finished 19th in goals for last year. We said a few weeks ago when we talked about it, if they can finish in that same ballpark, they're still going to need to be a little bit better defensively, and they're going to need to find another 30 to 40 goals from that Tyler Toffoli scored last year from newcomers, whether it be Sharangovich, whether it be Pellitier, whether it be Coronato, some combination of those, somebody who's on the team already like Huberdeau or Andrew Mangiapane playing better than they did last year. They're going to have to find another 30 to 40 goals. So if they're going to do that, that's just to maintain what they were last year. And they missed the playoffs last year because of the goaltending. So I think essential, absolutely most essential, is Jacob Markstrom returning to league average. I'm not even saying good. I'm saying if he's a league average goalie, they're in better shape than they were last year out of the gate.
I think, that's a very fair assessment, I would say. And I guess, this is the perfect time for them to be average. We talk about them being stuck in the soggy middle all the time. If your goaltender's, just chill in there, that's fine. He can be average and just get you into the playoffs. And I think that's one of the stepping stones that we just need to tackle and reach this season.
I don't want to spend too much time talking about just the goaltending because we did mention Huberdeau and Rasmus Andersson. But one more point on that because you brought it up. You don't need the world-class elite goaltender to win the Stanley Cup in today's NHL. You need a goalie who is serviceable and can on occasion get to that really high peak. They don't need to be consistently at that high peak, but you run into the issue where when you pay your goalie the top of the market value when they're the best at their position, that $2 or $3 million you're paying them versus, say, a goalie a tier down, That's one more third line forward who can put up 20 goals in a season. And that's where you start to see teams with the really expensive goalies struggle in their roster construction. So the fact that the Flames aren't paying Markstrom a ton, I mean, 6.5 is middle of that second tier. He's below Vasilevsky, Sorokin, Shesterkin. He's in the next tier down. Dependable starter. You expect decent numbers. You expect a little bit above average. But shifting gears, we'll talk about Huberdeau in specifics. It really does seem, in regards to Huberdeau, that he's going to be the focal point of this next period of Flames hockey, whatever that looks like from an organizational perspective. Whether that translates to hockey or not, that's on him to figure out. But it does seem like the way the team has been covered in the offseason, the amount of availability he's had, the amount he's talked to the media, it seems to some degree he's kind of finding his footing. He's a little bit more comfortable. He's kind of I don't want to say taking a leadership role, but he's assuming a leadership role where he feels like, hey, the young guys kind of got the shaft last year. I want to make sure that doesn't happen again. I'm going to go out there and be proactive and tell people what happened so we're in a better environment. And then it's just a matter of the hockey.
Yeah.
The talent is always going to be there. We talk about this all the time in regards to guys struggling to adapt to new situations. The talent was there. The confidence wasn't. It's just a matter of Huberdeau feeling better about his game. It's ironic because, as we're saying, he's probably the most important forward on the team. But the weight of the team is not on him alone. And I do feel like to some degree last year, he might have felt that burden that, oh, we're struggling. I need to do something to turn this around. I'm a really good player. I know I am. I put up 100 points last year. And when you're pressing and you're really pushing it, that's when you typically hit that wall of, I can't buy a goal right now because you're trying so hard.
Yeah. And I think that, you make a really good point. They've kind of rolled him out on a red carpet this summer with all of the media availability and just certain framing of stories and everything like that. So I definitely think that he has taken on that kind of leadership role in a way, because we know that he's mentored Pellitier a little bit. And there was another prospect in a summer league in Quebec that he's kind of taken on, which is nice. I think that that's good because, this is going to be a young team. They need someone to look up to and that has their back.
Absolutely. And we'll squeeze in Rasmus Andersson here, get under the wire before we end the first segment. He's going to play the most out of any player on the team. Your number one defenseman is always going to play the most minutes of anyone on your team, barring something extremely weird happening where a forward can end up. But that happens very rarely, and that really only happens when we're talking about a McDavid or a McKinnon, and their team is chasing a deficit late in the game where they're going to play a 4 or 5 minute shift, which might squirt them up into those mid-20s. But Rasmus Andersson's going to play 24, 25 minutes a night. He's going to power play. He's going to power play. He's going to kill penalties. He's going to be your first pair right D. There's a good chance he might be named captain to start the season. He's essential, but your player that is used the most is, by definition, your most essential because he's going to be out there the most. And we know Rasmus Andersson is capable of playing at a very high level. This is somebody who can flirt with being an NHL All-Star, depending on the year and the configuration of the event and who gets to go and whatnot. I don't know if he'll ever be in the Norris conversation because he probably won't put up enough of the counting stats that typically dominate the voting for that. We saw it last year where the definition of the award is most well-rounded defenseman, but Erik Karlsson won it, not playing any defense on a team that won 25 games all year. But Rasmus Andersson is really solid. You hope the long offseason helped him recover. He didn't feel great, didn't play great after the accident that happened in Detroit last year. And he said it himself, I rushed back. I wasn't really conscious of what that was going to do by rushing back. So hopefully the long offseason, he settles in because he's essential. For the team to be successful, you need him to play those 24, 25 minutes a night at a really high level.
There's not much else to add there. Hopefully they all stay healthy because, again, that is a pivotal part of finding success in this season. But before we move on to talk about Tier 2, I do want to take a quick break here and talk to you about FanDuel. Snap into action this NFL season with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Right now, new customers get $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place a $5 bet. That's $200 in bonus bets, win or lose. If you have been thinking about joining FanDuel, now is the perfect time to do it, and there's no better time to do it. The app is super easy to use, and there's a wide range of betting options, including spreads, player props, over-unders, and more. So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and kick off the NFL season. Nick, should people bet on your Giants?
They're playing San Francisco on a short week without their best running back, and the left tackle hurt his hamstring against the Cowboys week 1. I would not be betting legal U.S. currency on the New York Football Giants at this time.
So visit FanDuel.com/LockedOn and kick off the NFL season. FanDuel, the official partner of the NFL. Thanks, everyone, for hanging out with us here as we count down the days until the season starts and as we go through the pyramid and move on to tier 2.
So I would say there's an argument you put Nazem Kadri in tier 1 because of how much money he's getting paid, how good he was the first half of last year before he kind of hit that physical wall. And he talked about it that after the All-Star break, he was just exhausted and really hard to kind of maintain the performance he put up in the first half. But the secondary tier guys, you're talking Kadri, you're talking Mangiapane, you're talking Mackenzie Weegar, the guys who they're not your best players, but they're that next tier down. The guys who, if the team is going to be successful, these are the types of guys who have to have good seasons. And that's not to say that they're not important by putting them here in tier 2, but this is in terms of when we were talking about in the first segment, the range of outcomes. The bet for the Flames to have their best possible season, you are going to need to have strong seasons out of Kadri, out of Weegar, and out of Andrew Mangiapane, because that's your next tier down in terms of salary, what you're expecting them to do, and frankly, what the team is going to do. And I was having this conversation with somebody earlier today because we were talking about point totals for teams and who might go over, who might go under. And because a lot of the way the numbers are set up, most numbers are for teams that are going to make the playoffs are between like 98 and 106, 107. And we know every year there are going to be teams who are 110, 115, and there are going to be a lot of teams who are in the high 80s and the low 80s as opposed to the 70s and that kind of thing, because it's not in the most likely range of outcomes for a team to finish with 115, 120 standings points. For the Flames to finish with 105, and their total was, I want to say, 94. If they were to finish somewhere around 95, 100 standings points, that means Kadri, Mangiapane, both are putting it in the neighborhood of 25 goals each. In the neighborhood of 25 goals each. And that sounds like a lot, but Mangiapane has done that, and Nazem Kadri has done that. Mm-hmm. But if the Flames are going to be the team that the organization might think it is, those guys are going to put up 25 goals each, and that's the best range of outcomes. The more likely, of course, somewhere between 15 and 20, which solid, great. That's what you need from your depth guys. But we're not talking about the depth guys yet. We're talking about the dependable guys, the guys who, when the season is kind of in that slog of January, February, the guys who, they've got 7 points in 10 games relatively frequently, and they just keep accumulating that every couple of weeks. And at the end of the year, they have 65 points and 30 goals. That's great. For the Flames to be successful, they're going to need that from that tier of guys.
I think that Kadri, at least for me, he's kind of like on the cusp of tier 1. I think that he can get away with being in tier 2, absolutely, because, like you said, he's not going to be playing the amount of minutes as a Rasmus Andersson or a Jonathan Huberdeau. He's still going to need to produce and, do what he was brought here to do. And I'm hoping that the long off season also helps him. And I think a healthy Mangiapane will hopefully show us signs of life again.
It's challenging, especially for guys with these types of skill sets. When you're talking about a Mangiapane, a Blake Coleman, a Dylan Dubé, a Kadri, a Mackenzie Weegar, where a lot of their game is energy, finesse, being in the right place at the right time, and not necessarily being the most skilled guy. It's about making a play happen through effort and positioning, which that's not the most translatable skill. We talk about this all the time in regards to what you want to be paying for. Those motor, effort, energy guys, they're essential components of every championship team. but those are the guys who cannot manufacture offense on their own, and they require favorable game situations to kind of manufacture offense. You have to tailor your play style to funneling pucks on net, dumping the puck down low, winning battles. And there are nights where you're just not going to be able to win those loose 50-50 pucks, and you're not going to be able to score. And the Flames had that happen to them quite a bit last year, where they would get a ton of volume. They wouldn't be able to convert a lot of those chances because they weren't particularly dangerous chances. And they kind of hit this, like a hamster in a wheel, just running in place over and over again in the same spot, where the process looks decent. I mean, they're getting pucks on net, they're playing rebounds, they're looking for deflections, but it is hard to live like that consistently, because at some point you need someone on your team that's going to be able to make that dynamic play that operates outside of structure, that's going to result in a goal or create an opportunity that's going to lead to a goal off of a second chance. And the Flames don't really have that kind of guy. Huberdeau can be that guy in spurts, but he's never really been a dominant, imposing force, because his best traits are his playmaking. It's not necessarily his skating. And playmaking is a great asset to have, but if he's going to be that type of player, he needs complementary pieces who are going to be able to use that. It's great to be a great playmaker, but if you're passing the puck to Milan Lucic, he's not going to be able to do as much with it as someone else.
Yeah, that play pretty much dies as soon as the puck leaves your stick, and we don't want to see any of that this season. I think we all saw enough of that last year, and there's no need to play 82 games of dump and chase anymore. We can move on from that and hopefully learn from it. I mean, sometimes it is beneficial, but we don't need to just cut, copy, and paste through the entire season. Would you put Elias Lindholm in this category?
I don't know where I want to put Lindholm, which is something I've been thinking about this entire time, because I frankly don't think he's going to be on the team the entire season. So in terms of importance, you probably have to put him tier 1, because like Andersson, he's probably going to play the most minutes out of everybody in your forward group. He's going to kill penalties. He's going to be on your power play. He's your first line center. You probably matchup center him, where you send him out there against the other team's best players. But because you don't know what his status on the team is, you can't really accurately rank him. So I have a little NA next to Elias Lindholm on my list.
I think that's fair. I mean, you don't know what you're getting with him. He might give you his 2 weeks notice, or he might just accept the promotion, or he'll just dip. You never know. So Mackenzie Weegar, he's like the Energizer Bunny.
And again, we were just talking about this in regards to Mangiapane. It's true of Blake Coleman. Because he doesn't put up a ton of counting stats, because he's not flashy, because he's not an offensively inclined defenseman, he's probably never going to really get the credit, the recognition he deserves for his game. But this is one of the best defensive defensemen in the entire league. There are limitations to that, though. What you can do with that type of player, the situations you can use him in, what him having that skill set does to the rest of the players he's on the ice with. But you know what you're going to get from him. As the season went along last year, he got better, he got more consistent, he got more comfortable, and you never really felt any issues when he was on the ice. Sure, you would have liked a lot of the pucks that clanged in off of his partner Tanev to not go into the net, but that's not their fault. No. That's not something that's particularly preventable. You can try, but at the very least, you feel pretty good about Andersson and Weegar down your right side. In theory, if Lindholm is on the team, Lindholm, Kadri down the middle as your 1-2 is solid. Huberdeau is, I'd say, an upper tier left wing. He's not top tier in the entire league, but upper tier left wing. The bones are decent. The issue with this team is, and we're going to talk about it in a second, a lot of this tier 3 is just unknown. And when you're relying on the unknown as part of your calculus, you can't expect a lot, frankly, especially some of these guys who just don't have the NHL experience. That's why they're tier 3. It's whatever you get from them, that's great.
And we are going to talk more about this pyramid and rounding it out with tier 3 coming up next. But before we do that, we're going to take a quick break and talk to you about Jase Medical. Everyone should be empowered to take care of themselves and their loved ones. That's why Jase Medical offers the Jase case. The Jase case provides 5 antibiotics for you and gives you a peace of mind so that you aren't just hoping that you have access to medications in an emergency. Jase Medical makes sure you have the medication in hand. Jase Medical is simple. They handle everything from the online evaluation to licensed pharmacy medication delivery and ongoing consultation and care. Save more than $360 by getting these antibiotics with Jase Medical, plus an additional $20 off using code LOCKEDON at checkout on jasemedical.com. That is JASE medical.com, promo code locked on. Thanks everyone for hanging out with us as we wrap up today's show with, I don't want to call them bottom feeders.
The unknown. Because every team comes into the season with a couple guys where you just don't know where they're going to fit in. We're in this case, we're talking about guys like Pellitier, Walker Dewar, Matt Coronato, Sharangovich, where you really could have anything in terms of range of outcomes for what they're going to give you this upcoming season. And you frankly, because of that, you can't accurately put them in one of the first two tiers. Like, if the Flames have a good season, there's a good chance all of those guys end up in tier 2. Like, if the team has a strong season, they win 45 games, something like that, that probably means Pelletier, Coronato, you could argue Dylan Dubé, those types of guys had good seasons. Because unless someone in tier 2 had a tier 1 type season, more likely than not, that means somebody you weren't expecting to have a strong year did. And for somebody in this tier, it's guys without a ton of experience. And we were talking about it in regards to trying to replace those 34 Tyler Toffoli goals. You don't have, one guy doesn't have to do all of that. Across Sharangovich, Pelletier, and Coronato, 3 guys. Sharangovich put up like 13 or 14 on a really good Devils team last year, playing third line, no power play. You can safely assume getting a little power play time and playing in the top 6 as opposed to third line, that's 18 to 20 goals. Safe estimation. Anything more than that, I think that's gravy for them. In regards to Pelletier and Coronato, 10 each, 10 goals each, that's fine. If you get 10 goals each out of them, that's fine. If that means that other people didn't do their jobs, because if you lost because those guys put up 10 as opposed to 15 or 20 each, that's the rest of the team, because you can't realistically expect anything more than that for rookies who are going to be playing low in the lineup, who probably won't get power play time, at least to start the year. So that's why they have to fall into tier 3.
Obviously, like a fair assessment. We don't know what we're getting with them. And there are a ton of question marks around Sharangovich, because he was on the Devils and didn't really do a lot in his time there. And from what I understand, last year was a particularly down year for him. I would be too if I lived in New Jersey, but I do have to wonder how long him being on the top right wing will last for. That I have a lot of uncertainties around that.
So I pulled up his hockey reference while you were talking. Yeah, 13 goals last year, fewest of his career in a season. Also played the fewest minutes per season, which that's tied directly to power play, because the drop-off is 1648 as a rookie, 1630 2 years ago, and last year, 1425. That extra 2 minutes, that's power play time.
Yeah.
And he went from playing on a power play. That does have some talented players. The Devils, you think Dougie Hamilton, Jack Hughes, Nico Hischier, Jesper Bratt. They have a very talented forward group. So even as one of the secondary guys on that power play, or even on the second unit, you're going to get goals just by osmosis, just by being out there. And pucks are going to find you. When the good players are on the ice, the defense is going to shift towards them. That's going to open up things for you. And that's assumed to be part of the Flames' calculus here of trading for him in the way that they did is, okay, if we throw him out there with Huberdeau and Lindholm, teams are going to cue in on Huberdeau and Lindholm. That's going to give him more opportunities to get open to shoot the puck. And 24 goals, that's nothing to sneeze at the NHL level. Granted, it was on a really bad Devils team that didn't play any defense, so they put all of their emphasis and their players into scoring. So that's probably, realistically, Sharangovich is probably 18-20 goal guy. On a reasonable team, 18-20 goals, which again, nothing to sneeze at. That's solid. If this is a good season for the Flames, he can get closer to what he had 2 years ago, that 24 goal number. Same thing, Pelletier, Coronato. 10 is your expectation. You get 15. Okay, the Flames probably had a good season.
Yeah, I mean, I think that people really do need to really curb their expectations for a lot of these younger guys coming in, the ones that are making the jump from the Wranglers or college to the NHL. They're not used to playing at the NHL caliber and consistently.
The biggest thing is the body change, because you go from a college hockey season's 34 regular season games, you make the playoffs, at the most you're playing another 6 games. We're talking about going from 40 to 80 games, and even though we talk a lot about the wall that the goalies hit about January, it's the same thing for the skaters. Look at Kadri. Yeah. Kadri went to the Cup final the year before in Colorado. They won the Stanley Cup. He had a 2-month off season. He came out of the gate really hot, and he hit a wall about January, and he had 9 goals, something like that, in his last 40 games on the team. The physical wall will come for all of these guys.
Yeah, and I mean, part of it is just natural, and you have to just kind of ride it out and hope that there is an end in sight for it. But would you put Dan Vladar in here, or do you think he's gone?
I think he ends up getting traded, because I think they're going to come into the season, and Wolf is going to force their hand just by being in training camp and probably having a good training camp, because everyone looks good in training camp, frankly. And there are enough teams out there that could use a goalie that I think it doesn't make sense to carry 3 goalies into the season. Colorado needs a goalie because of what's going on with Francois. The Devils could use a goalie to put into their tandem. There are several. The Leafs could, if the Leafs probably don't trade for a goalie until the deadline if they're in need of a goalie. Mm-hmm. But there are enough teams that need a goaltender that I think the Flames can't justify 3 goalies, especially because Wolf's too good for the AHL at this point. He's proven all there is to prove at the AHL level. You are wasting his development time, because there will be an adjustment curve going from the AHL to the NHL.
Yeah, and that's definitely something to remember, because not everyone is just going to jump into this and see immediate success and sustain that. Is there anyone else you put in this category?
I mean, you could put Blake Coleman here, but he could be in tier 2 as well, where I don't expect a ton from him, because you know what his track record is at this point. He'll be somewhere between 15 and 20 goals. He'll be defensively responsible. He'll have really good underlying numbers, because he's really good at playing dump and chase. Nothing flashy, nothing spectacular. You can kind of know what you're going to get out of him. On the back end, you probably put Tanev here. You could probably put Kylington here as well, because you really have no idea what you're going to get from him after not playing last year. Mm-hmm. He's shown the ability to be a good player at the NHL level. It's just a matter of if it's still there or not.
Definitely. And I want to even throw in Adam Klapka, because he had a good rookie prospect camp training tournament thing. And I saw something today that I believe it was Eric Francis said that he expects Klapka to be on the opening night roster. Obviously, we'll take that with a grain of salt. Consider your sources. But, yeah, I think that does it for today. I mean, I don't expect the Flames to do anything crazy between now and opening night, but only time can tell. So thanks for hanging out with us as we kick off the NHL season here on Locked On Flames. Make sure you're subscribed wherever you get your podcasts, and, of course, on YouTube as well. You can follow us on Twitter at Jess Belmosto and at Nick Zararis. And just have fun, be safe, be smart. Nick, do you have any parting words?
We're getting there. Most teams are starting training camp this week.
Yeah, we're there. Almost there.